And I won't go through them all, but let me just tell you what the three major parts of this report are that we are requiring the Department of Defense to come up with. The first of those is the sufficiency of the acreage of Pinyon Canyon. You know, you've said, and I have heard, and I've seen the maps, and I have been there, 237 acres of land at the Pinyon Canyon maneuver site. Is that sufficient land for the Army training needs? Do they need one more acre of land, or do they not? Okay? Some of you, in your correspondence to me over the last year, have pointed out the findings of the BRAC Commission in 2005, and in the findings of the BRAC Commission, which I have here, it was very clear that what the Commission said is that the Commission's finding to move 2 additional brigades into Fort Carson was not dependent at all on the need for the acquisition of any additional land at Pinyon Canyon. So the language of the BRAC Commission was this: it said the Commission's independent and objective analysis showed that with or without including the Pinyon Canyon maneuver site in the accounting of acreage, Fort Carson has enough capability for the additional growth of Fort Carson. And so it is a legitimate question in my mind for us to look at whether or not the Army does need any additional land, or whether the 237,000 acres that it already has at Pinyon Canyon is sufficient to get the job done. So that's one of the things that we ask the Army to do here, is to take a look at that question. The second thing that we ask the Army to do is to, in its report, to provide us a response on the question of additional land. This is not prejudging whether or not you need to have 1 more acre or 10 more acres or whatever the acres might be. But this is to ask the Army to provide us a response to questions as to what additional training capacity would be added to Fort Carson if in fact it has some additional land. And so we have asked the Army to provide us a report on that. And if you read the language of the legislation, it says that we are asking the Army to provide a report of need for any proposed addition of training land to support units, stationed or planned to be stationed at Fort Carson, including a whole series of things that we ask them to identify for us. So if they need additional land, what kind of additional training capacity is that going to have? And then the third thing that we ask in this legislation for the Army to do is to provide us an analysis of alternatives for enhancing the economic development opportunities in southeastern Colorado, including the preservation of the ranching heritage of southeastern Colorado. So we ask them to look at the following alternatives, including the leasing of land, okay, on the site itself. Okay, this is on the 237,000 acres. This is not even assuming there's additional land that will be acquired by the Army. But if there's some additional assistance to the ranching heritage of the state that could be provided by how the Army uses the current 237,000 acres that it already owns in southeastern Colorado. We ask them to look at the possibility of leasing of land as opposed to the purchasing of land. We ask them to look at whether or not there is a possibility of using other federal land in other places around the country as opposed to the Pinyon Canyon area or the southeastern part of Colorado. There are a whole host of questions that are asked for in this legislation. We ask the Army to provide us with an answer to those questions within 6 months of the enactment of the law. Those 6 months have not yet started to run because they won't start running until the President signs the legislation. That may happen. It may happen now in October. It may end up happening sometime between now and the end of the year. But once the President signs the bill, then the timeline will start to run. And there'll be a 6-month window for the Army to provide the answers to all these questions that we have asked for in the report form. And then at that point in time, what we have done, that I included in this legislation, was to have an independent review. So the General Accounting Office will take a look at what the Army's findings are, and the General Accounting Office will come up with a review and a report with respect to the findings that we get from the Army. That's an additional 6 months. Okay? It seems to me that at that point in time, with those reports and studies done, we'll be in a position where we can determine how to proceed. It may be that the answers that we get back are that the Army does not need any more land than the 237,000 acres that it already has. It may be that in this report we get back some information from the Army that there are ways in which the U.S. Army and Fort Carson can work more closely with the local community of southeastern Colorado to provide some economic development benefits for southeastern Colorado. It may be that in that report that they say, given the 237,000 acres that the federal government now has in southeastern Colorado, there are ways in which they can work with the ranching community to provide some opportunities for the ranching community in southeastern Colorado. I don't know what the answers to any of those questions are going to be, but it seems to me that this approach is one that will be helpful to us as we move forward in trying to answer these questions once and for all. The alternative, frankly, and I heard that gentleman in the back saying, saying all right now, the fact of the matter is that if all we do is to say, sign on to frustrate Salazar for 1 year, the essence of that is that it's not going to take away this question. It's always going to linger. I wanted to go through this process to have this issue resolved once and for all. And I will tell you that my guiding principles on all of this are, first, from a national security point of view, I don't believe that the federal government ought to be acquiring any more land if it doesn't need it for national security.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, I appreciate the applause, but I want you all to be thoughtful with me as I try to go through this process. If the conclusion is that the Army does not need 1 additional acre of land beyond the 237,000 acres, so be it. It's over and it's done. And I will applaud that decision. Okay? If the decision is that the 237,000 acres that the Army has acquired, that there can be a more productive relationship between Fort Carson and southeastern Colorado, I want to take a look at that as well. You know, I met with the Colorado Springs Chamber of Commerce this morning. I said to them, you know, I understand the frustration of people in southern Colorado and southeastern Colorado. You know, I understand the fact that from the perspective of many of us in southern Colorado, the golden curtain drops at the El Paso County line. And that even though we bring in, as we just have in the Department of Defense and appropriations bills and MOCOM VA bills, about $1 billion of construction activity in Fort Carson, Schriever, Peterson, the Air Force Academy, and so on and so forth, how does it benefit the people of southeastern Colorado? I said to them, if I were the county commissioners in Los Alamos County, and I was in their position where 237,000 acres of land were taken over to help Fort Carson with promises, now some 25 years ago, that there would be benefits to southeastern Colorado. I would be frustrated if I was in their position, because all I would see today is essentially 237,000 acres that have been taken over by the federal government, and there has not been any benefit to the people of southeastern Colorado. That's what I told the people of Colorado Springs this morning. Okay? So, I want us, as we go through this analysis, to take a look at the existing site itself, the 237,000 acres, and to take a look at the relationship that Fort Carson has with Canyon Canyon, the relationship that Fort Carson and Colorado Springs have with the southeastern Colorado community. And hopefully there will be some positive things that will come out of that. Now, if in this analysis, okay, there is, at the end of the day, some suggestion that additional land does need to be acquired for some of the training capabilities that the Army does need. We'll continue to fight to make sure that it is only from willing sellers and willing buyers. We'll continue to look at whether or not there's alternatives, such as raising associations and reforms and how to support good. But I don't think we even need to get into those questions until we answer the first, most fundamental question here, and that is, does the United States Army need any additional land in southeastern Colorado beyond the 237,000 acres that it is already required.